Hello again, it's Mr. Trochet, 8.2.1 video lesson. Is the survey fair? And now we're going to be talking about collecting data. We are going to be collecting information, and we're going to be using this information and putting it all together in terms of how we can use this information, how would we read it. But basically, we're talking about collecting data. So we have some representative samples in this situation here. For example, if you want to know what a bowl of soup tastes like, do you need to eat all the soup in the bowl? Honestly, you can just get a good taste by trying to solve a small sample, right? So that's what a sample is going to be. If I wanted to get an idea of what a common or popular flavor is for, let's say, Laffy Taffy, you can just take a little survey and see what people say, and that'll be a small sample to get an idea. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So I just love these fireworks. I don't know why. I mean, that's the one thing I'm going to use probably every single day on these videos. All right. So basically, when you conduct a survey, you won't usually survey every single person in the population. For example, all female teenage shoppers, or all the students at your school, or all the adults above 55 years old. That's a population. A sample of a population is a portion of a population. So these are some things that you actually will have, and these are common words and phrases that you'll use. And then we have a representative sample, and that sample that represents the whole population. Well, it's not even really easy, but yeah. So take a look at these definitions. Go ahead and click on these in the book. But yeah, that's going to be a representative sample of just, we'll talk more about this later. But anyways, we have a few problems that we want to talk about. Shouldn't take too long, but just so you know, it's going to be very conceptual, and we're going to be talking about a few things. All right. So if you're going to be listening and writing things down, make sure you're following along, listening and trying to pretend like you and me are having a conversation. So 8-29, we have a social director, Ramin, I would say Ramin or Ramin, would like to survey a few students about their interest. So he wants to make claims about the interest of all the students in the school. However, you don't want to say, this is what everyone thinks. This is what all of them think. This is what all the students at my school believe. We don't say that. You want to say, this is a majority of the population. I got a small sample of the students in my school, and they all have said this. So if I took, for example, 10%, but they all said 10%, that's fine. I wouldn't say all the entire school will think that. Gotta be very careful when you talk like that. So it might be hard to make claims about what all the students think, but let's go ahead. Consider this idea as you think about samples below. If Ramin wanted to generalize the opinions of all students at his school, would it make sense to go to the grocery store and survey the people there? No, not at all. It would not make sense at all. You need to make sure that you're using the same location, that you want to stick to the same demographics. You want to make sure that you're using the right tools and asking the right people. So, for example, if I want to see if people like sports, if I went to a park or a sports arena or area, I'm sure I'd get a higher sample of people saying, yeah, I like sports. Rather, if I went to the library and asked people if they like sports, I'm probably going to get a lower percentage of people liking sports just by the area itself. For B, if he wanted to generalize the opinions of all students at his school, would it make sense to ask all of his friends at the school? It does make more sense. However, it doesn't make clear sense, because if you're asking your own personal friends, they're probably going to be biased. Maybe they might say something that you like to hear and not actually what is the actual opinion. Maybe because they just want to feel like they want to help, and they just want to say things that might benefit you, because that's what friends do. But it makes some sense, but it doesn't make the best sense overall in terms of does it make sense? But yes, at the location, it does make sense at the school, but having your own friends is not the best way to go about it. The last one says, if you wanted to generalize the opinions of all students at the school, would it make sense to ask every third person Who entered the cafeteria at lunch? Yes, that is going to be more so. Where's my mouse at? Is my mouse gone? Uh, there it is. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah, my mouse was gone for a second. Yes, that makes sense. Why? Because it's completely random people. It is at the location of the school, and there will be no bias. It could be sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders. They might not know exactly who you are. But again, they may be making a joke and say yes or no, maybe get some random answers. But at the end of the day, at least those may be the outliers, and you probably will get a better sample result of that. All right, so that's just the idea of getting samples and results. So 8:30, and again, you should have wrote those answers down. It's pretty simple. We're just talking here. We're just looking at this book. You probably can do this on your own. But if you want to go ahead and pause the video and work on this, please feel free. There are a variety of ways to choose samples. So every sample has a feature that makes it more or less representative of the larger population. So if you want to represent the students at your school, you survey all the students at the school 30 minutes after the last class ended. You are likely to get a disproportionate number of students who play sports, attend after-school activities, or go to after-school tutoring events. So exactly, like I said, if you go to a sports event and you talk about sports, you're going to have a disproportionate amount of people liking sports, and then vice versa with like the library and sports, or library and books and whatnot. So if you ask the opinion of the people around you, then you have used a convenient sample. It's very convenient for you in this area right now. So if you took a convenient sample right now, what would some features of this sample be? Well, for me, it would be samples of preteens and teenagers. It would be 12, 13 years old. It would be a very convenient sample of a certain demographic, and also a population of age groups and stuff like that. Would you expect a convenient sample to represent the entire student population at your school? I would say no. I would say personally no. I would like a mixture of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, stuff like that. And especially if we're talking about math, you're in math class. So we're going to have a specific type of student in my math class, right? If you email or create an online questionnaire, then you have a voluntary response sample. What are some features of people in a voluntary response sample? So some things like that is just, you're going to get people behind a computer screen. You're going to get people behind a cell phone, or however they're going to respond. And it's going to be some people that choose to respond, some people that don't choose to respond. And that's kind of the way that it goes. When you get voluntary response samples, you're probably going to have a low number of people responding, because it's most likely optional and they have better uses of their time, or maybe it's not very fun for them if there's no reward for it. And that's something that you probably want to think about. Could it represent the sample of all the students at the school accurately? I don't think so. I really don't think so. You're going to probably get people that are either strongly opinionated about the survey or something to give you that response, and people that don't care just won't even answer the survey. So you got to think about it like that. It's a good idea in theory, but in practicality, it's not the best way. You can use a cluster sample. You first divide the students into smaller groups so that each of the smaller groups representative of all the students of your school. Then you randomly select one or more people from these groups to sample. How about you divide the students at your school into groups that represent the whole school? So we can separate them into smaller groups. So we can do, for example, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We can do it by who's in the, let's see, PE class. We can do it by if you play sports or don't play sports. If you are in, like, for example, in my 6th and 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade math class versus just 7th grade math class. I mean, there's different ways you can go about it. And then I would say that maybe if you have, you can have the 6th graders at lunch versus the 7th and 8th graders at lunch. There's many ways. Are there any reasons that these clusters might not be fully representative of all the schools at your school? And that's kind of what it is. It's separating at the same time. You're still separating these students by a specific cluster. So you got to be careful about that. The best way to do this would probably be where they're all together, and then you kind of just maybe get a cluster of people at like different lunch tables or something like that. So everyone's at lunch. You have one person from each table kind of talk to their groups and then collect that response, and that might be the best way. But at the end of the day, It is just what it is as you take it one sample as a sample size at a time. All right, 831. From what population is each of these samples taken? Write down the actual population of these sampling techniques. So I'm going to probably write these down now. So I'm going to start writing things down. Let me get my pen here. I'll use blue. This sounds good. So if you call every 100th name in the phone book, that's your method. What is it actually doing? Well, it's people with phones who have their numbers listed. You're not even including the people that don't have numbers listed. So you're eliminating a lot of people. So that's kind of like the idea of it is good, but the actuality of this is not good. The next one, survey people who come to the Vote Now booth at the high school football game. Well, if they're voting, that's good, but here's the thing. You're only getting people that are probably high school football fans or that support athletics who are interested even just stopping by. So actual population is football fans, for example, interested in voting, because if they don't want to vote, they're not going to stop by the booth. In athletics, like these are all the people, and I'm making it very short, but people that like football, people that are interested in voting, people that are in the athletics, they're just mainly, if they're interested in voting, they're going to vote. And if they don't want to vote, then they're not going to vote now. And they're just going to walk away. Ask every 10th student entering a high school football game. Again, so that's the thing. It's limiting in people that are in the athletics or that like football. So I would say, if I can go back real quick, interested in voting is more for the Vote Now. And then entering the high school football game is just going to be people that are in the athletics or that are football fans. Those are the main things. So haphazardly survey students during the morning break. Okay, so this is all students. This is a good one. If it's all students at break, so like if we're all on the blacktop and you just randomly choose someone and say, hey, can you answer this question real quick? That's all students at break. That's a good one. And you're just randomly surveying people. I think that would be a good way to get that survey done. Text response to an online instant poll. Okay, so again, idea that's good, but then they need to have a phone, right? If they don't have a phone, you're not gonna get people that are gonna respond to the text because they don't have a phone. And again, they may not vote. The people that vote are only the people that want to vote. I mean, that's the only people that are going to do that, because if it's online, it's instant, they want to do it. All right, they don't do it. Hand out surveys in the library before what? Before school. Well, you can do that, but not everyone's going to be in the library. Again, so it's very, people that are in the libraries are people that are interested in educating and reading and learning, and so it's going to be kind of like a specific audience. So it's a specific audience, not all students. Not all, I can't write that, students. So it's a specific audience, not all students. So the idea of it, it's going to be like studious students, learning students, trying to get ahead, working on homework or reading for entertainment. And there's many ways to do that. There's many ways to entertainment as well. But this is just the, again, idea of if you're in a library, you're trying to kind of move forward in terms of how you are using books to further your situation. Survey all students in period 1 English classes. Yeah, you can. It does represent, if it's all students in period 1 English classes, maybe not everyone is taking English first period. Maybe some students don't take English first period, so you're only getting a specific part of the students. So depends. If every student has to take English first period, that's fine. Depends, but not all students for the most part. Because maybe you have PE first period and then you never get the survey. So that's kind of one of those things. But if it was all period 1, then yeah, everyone in period 1 in any class takes a survey. you have to take a survey, then that's everybody. So it all depends. All right, let's continue going. So here at 832, we have at the study of University of Iowa, 2008 concluded that children that play violent video games are more aggressive in real life. And there's another fly in here. Children 9 to 12 were studied to determine how much they played violent video games. Peers and teachers were asked how much these students hit, kicked, or got in fights with other students. So by looking and watching and playing violent video games, do they actually become violent in nature? Can you legitimately conclude from this study that teenagers who play violent video games tend to be more aggressive? Why or why not? And I would say no, because so from this study that teenagers who play violent games tend to be more aggressive. The survey said children 9 to 12 were studied. So it's not even related to this population. The population isn't even close. So that means, is it teenagers? And I would say no. No, it's not, because it's not even in the same population. It doesn't even include teenagers. So this is kind of a tricky question. You got to read it carefully, because everything else says 9 to 12, 9 to 12, 9 to 12. But this one says teenagers. So you got to be very careful. It's very specific. B, can you legitimately conclude from this study that children aged 9 to 12 who play violent video games are more likely to commit violent crimes? Why or why not? Okay, we're just talking about hitting, kicking, and getting into fights. Violent crimes is a very specific thing. Violent crimes, we're talking about like murders and stuff like that. We're talking about violent crimes we're talking attempted murders and everything like that. So violent crimes, we're not looking at that. We're just talking about more aggressive, not violent crimes. So again, got to be very specific about what they're talking about. And you're probably like, oh, wow, I didn't look far into that. Sometimes we can generalize what they're saying, but you have to make it as they say it, commit violent crimes. We're not talking about committing violent crimes. We're just talking about being a little bit more aggressive. Okay. Can you legitimately conclude? Oh, my Siri went off. Can you legitimately conclude from this study that 9 to 12 who play violent video games tend to hit and kick more in school? Yes. This is exactly what they're talking about. Getting in fights with other students, peers and teachers. And that is what we're talking about, because peers and teachers are in school. Other students are in school, and these people are in school. So it's all the same population in the same area, and that is pretty much yes. Can you conclude that they tend to hit or kick more in school? That's what we're looking for. It does indicate this. It does conclude that. And can you legitimately conclude that the study that playing a lot of violent video games, blah, 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 become more violent at school? All right. Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. This is a very specific, yes, from this study that playing a lot, I like this part, a lot of violent video games, that's the key indicator here, and become more violent. Yes, but no. It's kind of hard to understand. So it can be said that there is some sort of relationship, but we're not sure if it is the actual cause of becoming more violent. So there is a relation. There's a correlation. It kind of goes together. But again, we're only focused on hitting and kicking in school. That's literally what it said. Hit, kick, right there. And this is hit, kick. So you can say this is probably the best answer right here, the best situation. This is probably the second best right here. And then this is probably the third best just because of the 9 to 12. So again, I would say for this one, no more so, but there is a relationship between those two. All right, and that's it. We're going to call it a day. I'm not going to take too much of your time. Understand some of these ideas of population. You don't have to write these down, but just know, again, it's all conceptual. It's all understanding, what are we talking about? How does this relate? Are we asking the right questions? Are we asking the right people? Are we asking the right population? And so just know that any survey or any data that you actually receive can be biased to fit your narrative. So anytime that you see statistics saying, oh, well, this statistic proved this, and it's like, yeah, but who did they ask? Where did they ask them? Why did they ask them? Because if I said 90% of the people love baseball, but I was at a baseball game when I asked it. It doesn't really mean that it makes sense. So I hope this makes everything a little bit more clear in terms of samples. We're just doing more concept, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Good luck on your homework. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the problems in the altitude card, and have a great day.